to have everyone joining for building my first voice app. We're most excited to have Hilary Black here along for the ride with us today. So first off, just want to give a big welcome from the Voiceflow team. Before we get started, instead of giving you all of the tools at the end of the workshop, we want to do that up front. And obviously, as we're building our first voice app here with Hilary, we thought it would be helpful for everyone to be in the canvas, in the Voiceflow canvas with us. So you should see in the chat now, Emily's going to be dropping a few links, and you'll be able to sign into the canvas right there, and then hopefully get started and actually build along with us. You can also engage with us on Twitter at Voiceflow HQ. Drop where you're from, a screenshot of the presentation. The presentation itself will also be on YouTube after the fact, so don't worry about scribbling notes too much. The voice you're hearing, the face you're seeing is myself, Sam Burns. I'm on the growth team at Voiceflow. You can find me on Twitter here, or email me if you have any questions after the fact.
Hi there. If we have not met yet, my name is Emily. I'm the head of growth at Voiceflow. I will be hanging out in the chat if you have any questions. You can get in touch with me if there's any questions, if anything you want us to go deeper on. Use the chat, use the Q&A, or feel free to tweet at us. And last but not least, I would love to pass it off to our main character for today, Hilary Black.
Hi, I love the big reveal here. If you don't know me, my name is Hilary Black, and I am a conversation designer. I am the co-founder and head of marketing at Mav, which is an automated SMS assistant, and I do conversation design there. And I am also a content creator and the creator of conversationdesignerjobs.com. So if you're looking for a job, be sure to go to our site. You can find me everywhere online at Internet Hilary. You can find me on LinkedIn at Hilary Black. And yeah, I'm so excited to get started with this. I'm super nervous, but also very excited.
Mostly excited, right? Mostly
Yes.
excited, a little nervous. So before we jump into the canvas and put you on the spot, Hilary, I wanted to give a little bit of background on what Voiceflow is, right? For someone who maybe has never used the tool or is aware of the tool or just needs to kind of recalibrate with that. So more than anything, Voiceflow is like a super simple tool to design, prototype, and launch conversation experiences across almost any channel. But today, obviously, we're focusing on voice. More than anything, we really want to democratize conversation design and development for anyone, right? That can be indie designers, like you talked about, people who are starting their first job, looking for their first conversation design job, or full-scale enterprise teams. It depends on, we're a tool for anyone there. This is obviously not the Canvas live, but a quick look at what we're going to be exploring today. Really, as you can see here, it's a super visually easy way to design and build and launch voice applications. It is really the single source of truth for teams as we can collaborate in there, as we'll see later. But this is a really quick snapshot of what we're going to be looking at in the canvas. So today, obviously, as we look at the title of this, we're looking at chat. You have a lot of experience in the chatbot realm, but we're going into voice, right? And as a conversation designer in conversation design, we're really looking at both buckets. Chat, on the first hand, right, has really been popularized through Facebook Messenger, chatbots, web embeds, even IVR, right? And a lot of people are using those first. That's the first foray into conversational AI and talking to computers in general. Mm-hmm. But as we look at today, voice, that second bucket, right, is really changing the way we design, develop, and interact with technology on the whole. So it's a new way, a frictionless way to have that conversation with computers that we're excited to experiment with you today. So we know conversation designers really are needing to have both skills, and that's I think what we're really excited to dive into. So as you prep for this, what are some things you're seeing, chat versus voice when your preparation, but obviously you don't know what the build is like yet, but preparation, how are you approaching that differently?
Yeah, and I guess too, for people who are not familiar with me, so I'm like a self-proclaimed like chat only conversation designer. So for the last 5 years, I've only designed for chatbots and SMS, which is very different. You could think that the similar principles apply, and obviously it's still meant to be a conversation. A lot of times it's meant to help a business engage with their customers, but there is so much that is very, very different, and it's more in the design aspect of it. So first, I would definitely say that the messages and the frequency of the messages is a little bit different, because when you're actually having a verbal conversation with someone out loud, they're not going to be paying attention to as much as they would like 3 sentences of text. And so even though you don't really want to have long blocks of text in any form of chat, it's a lot more acceptable in a chatbot than it is in voice, because even if you said right now, if you're listening to me, you probably don't remember the first thing that I said, and you wouldn't really know how to reply to me if you were having to like get a quiz on what I'm talking about right now. So that's, I guess, like kind of one way to think about that. And that's something that I noticed right away when I was writing my script, is a lot of the things that I would put into a chatbot, I cannot put into that, which leads me to the next one, which is there's no like emojis, there's no images, and those are things that I utilize like 100% of the time, especially for the use case that we're going to be doing. I definitely would have used a lot of emojis to kind of just break up the text, make it more engaging. But the way that you can make voice engaging is really with the language that you're using. You can create an immersive experience. You could use audio like music. You could use all different types of things in order to kind of make that a more immersive experience for the person. And that's something that you can't do in chat. You can only access, what you have. You could play a video, but it's not really the same. It's a more passive channel. And then thirdly would be speech recognition. So if you are using a chatbot, a lot of times you can capture what a person says and then repeat it back to them at a later time. You could utilize that for any form of like data collection. You could use that to build a profile on them, and you can remember something like how much they said they want to spend at a home. And that's not really something that is super reliable in voice, at least like from my opinion of not being an expert. It is something that I had to take into account of, if I'm trying to capture a sentence from someone, the likelihood that every single word that I'm hearing from them is going to be right and that I could actually repeat that back is not like 100% accurate. And if I can't do it in a 100% accurate way, I don't necessarily want to do it. So that's kind of like one thing that is definitely a difference. And then the last, which is kind of the most obvious, is there are not buttons if you're doing purely voice. If you're doing like a multimodal experience, you could have buttons. But this way you have to kind of be prompting people to make a selection, and you have to make sure that you're kind of providing them with all the answers of that without having those buttons or without having carousels or images available.
Yeah. One quick thing. Number 2 is interesting because I'm relatively in the last year newer to the space, and I remember putting in like an alarm clock emoji for a time of event.
Yeah.
Right. But then Alexa says, the event starts at 10 a.m. alarm clock, and like that type of nuance you don't think about, right? Because it's just, you think about it as one communication, but it's incredibly important to know those differences when you're building.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is something that my background is in social media. And so I've only been like a copywriter forever. I don't have like any sort of sound, or even like talking on the phone is not something that I have ever done in my career. So it's something that it's my gut instinct to like put tons of images and emojis in where appropriate, obviously. But yeah, it's definitely was a struggle to take those out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And before we really jump into, I think we'll notice some of like the buttons versus prompt and choice too, is like, as we prototype in the tool, some of those functionalities do carry over, obviously, as we prototype versus when it's actually live on an Alexa console, for example. But you'll notice some of those chat, voice, conversation design tools in the canvas. But speaking of the canvas, I'd love to pass the screen share over to you now. I know you had kind of talked about how you prep for this, and maybe some of the tools that you use to prep for this workshop in general.
Sure. Yeah, so let me just pop this over. You can see my screen.
Yep, got it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I wanted to talk just a little bit about how I actually went about designing this experience. And I guess before I talk about it, The experience that we are going to be designing is called My Mindful Day. It's like a habit or like a personal development type of experience. So it is I guess, a personal use case, which I think, we can talk a little bit about that. But I wanted to kind of just get an idea of the people who are watching this. Do you have experience in conversation design? Like, have you ever designed, a chat bot, a voice bot? Have you put thought into that dialogue? If you could just like let us know in the chat, so I can get an idea of what you've been up to. So let me see.
Got a few yeses right away. Yep.
Yeah. Chatbot's not voice. And I think that's probably a lot of people are in the same boat as me, which is great.
Absolutely.
And yeah, if you already know me, you probably have seen this spreadsheet before. And this is kind of like the template that I use to create all of my chat experiences that I had to figure out how I could use for voice. Started to make voice at work for people who hate chatbots. I'm designing my first chatbot, more chatbot experience. Yeah. So it's kind of, people who are familiar with conversation design in general, at least if you are not a professional conversation designer, you have tried it. And so one thing that I think differs a little bit between conversation designers and more people who might be using a tool more casually is that you need to actually plan out what you're doing ahead of time. Especially if you're working for a client, you need to have like a readily accessible place that you can start writing your copy before you even get to a prototype phase. So you want to think about like, what's my strategy? What am I doing? Who am I writing this for? There's a lot that goes into planning, actually creating your experience. And so, yeah, someone just dropped the link to this exact template in the chat. So if you are designing a chatbot, this will apply to that. But you can kind of change things. But yeah, so anyways, you want to make sure that you are thinking about the copy. And if you have to send it over to any sort of like legal person, you might need to have it in a way that is very plain and boring and not engaging, which we'll get to, a more three-dimensional aspect of this in the future. But yeah, so what I do is I kind of write everything out in a spreadsheet. So I've gone through and I've even made some notes. So when I was approaching this design, I was thinking from like a chatbot conversation designer's perspective. So like I said, there's long blocks of text that I might have included that I actually crossed out just so you guys could see kind of the difference. And so, yeah, there really is, a lot of variance, but I find that this is kind of a good way to approach it. And that was my thought process, was to say, what do I actually want someone to accomplish by creating this skill? What do I want them to build? And if I'm trying to build a habit, how can I make that more repeatable? So how can I think about things like subscriptions? How can I think about returning users? But we will get into all of that now, I think.
Yeah. And one really quick note, I think this is important for people to realize, is that by going through this workshop, we're not asking people to completely forget what they learned by being a chatbot designer, right? As a conversation designer, these are building block tools that you can apply these to chat, to voice, right? And you talked about for enterprise building or client building, a lot of these same flows and brand voices need to transition to different mediums, different channels. So it's important to have that content finalized, although it might be tweaked. It might, like you said, there's some nuances, emojis versus what's being able to be collected, but it's important to have this foundation of scripting that then can be, applied to different contexts, different intents, and different dialogue flows.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too that my thought even was I had wanted to create this experience as a chatbot in the past, and it's something that could be created as that, but it's actually a lot more interesting to build a habit when you're talking about like saying something out loud. It's kind of like the affirmations aspect of it. So I think it actually works better to be as a voice app as opposed to being a chatbot.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do. And it has that more of that friendly, mindful day kind of approach to it, right? A little bit more of a conversation for the conversational AI. So yeah, as you mentioned, let's hop into the creator tool here. I see you have the tab open there.
Yes.
And let's create a new project. And with the collaboration features of Voiceflow, I'll also jump in, and I know Emily will be in there as well as we kind of start to build this. But yeah, so like you're already ahead of it. You can create the project, put a logo in there so you can, that'll pop up if there's ever a visual. For today, although these are all the different channels that Voiceflow we can build for. Let's click on Amazon Alexa as a really easy starter one that we can, we won't do it today, but you can actually publish directly to your Alexa. Yeah, so let's create this project, and then I'll hop in as well after it pops in on my end. Perfect.
And so I also want to point out that all of you attending, this really is from scratch. I have played around a bit in trying to build this, but I really wanted to make it most authentic to you that I actually have never built this skill before. So you really are seeing it for the first time. And so I also apologize in advance if I am making some mistakes, but just make sure too that you're thinking, I'm doing this for the first time. You can do this for the first time and it will be super fun.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I agree. Like, I think if people want to build along on the canvas with us, highly encourage that, because I think it is kind of that trial and error a little bit here as we go. So I do want to give a quick tour of the canvas, as looks like you can see my mouse pretty high fidelity here, which is great for people. So on the left-hand side here, we see this response section, and probably the best way to learn the Voiceflow canvas is to look at this response and the user inputs, right? These two sections here. Really, the response is going to be anything that the assistant can prompt, right? That the computer is actually saying and doing. The user input is obviously what us, the user, the human, is going to be inputting into the assistant. So those block sections are really what we'll be sticking in today. Although there are more advanced features for today and for the next 20 minutes, we're going to keep it pretty basic building blocks, but I think this is a really good place to start. There's obviously more parts of the canvas. All the way up here, we see the Alexa published to Alexa symbol. We can share the prototype over here as well as test. So the canvas is very intuitive and very building block focused. Similar probably to when you're thinking about chat, but this way we'll really kind of have those blocks, connect the lines, and create this experience. So with that said, are you ready to build from scratch here?
I'm so nervous. And then one thing I want to add too before we start about like the use case in general is that if you are people who are in here are saying, I never have designed for voice before, it's a really good idea to just pick something that you actually are interested in. So the reason I picked this is because, like I said, I had considered making it a bot before, and I just generally like wanted to create something that is fun that I wouldn't mind like going all the way and creating. I'm not trying to create like a banking voice app because like I don't really care about that. So if you want to get experience and you don't have any experience, which several of you said that you don't, this is a really good way to kind of just like do something fun. Maybe you want to make a habit bot. Maybe you want to make something that, is more applicable to your life. And I think we're going to talk about a few more ideas later in the session. So then you can actually start creating these things that you can publish live and you can actually use as examples for your portfolio so you can get jobs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll tease a few things in the last 10 minutes. But yeah, this is exciting. So we did a few of the kind of the intro steps as we started the project, right? But I do want to kind of overview those because they are important, right? So we created an Alexa skill project. That's clear that we need to understand we're designing for Alexa. But then this start block that you see here is not always going to look exactly like this for different channels. But for Alexa, we see obviously that there's that invocation, Alexa open, and then my mindful day is the invocation name that we've selected for this project. So that would need to be said to the device to actually start. The help, stop, and cancel flows are built in, those commands, just because Alexa requires those as part of the skill being live. But from there, we'll actually just start at this block and let's create like a welcome block, right? Like the first thing people say based on your script. So let's drag a speak block over. Great. And yeah, we can call this welcome or something like that. And then let's add your explanation copy to kind of what's the first thing that people are going to hear from the Alexa.
Yeah. So as you'll see here, this is like how the exact process of how I do this. So I actually had said like, the name of the skill, and then now I have like a few little options here. And it could even be something too that if someone is starting this, they might not need to go all the way down to start. But it's just something that you could include. And this is all kind of things that I guess I'm learning because I have never done this before. So I don't know, what's the best approach. Do you want to double confirm that someone wants to do it and offer them other things or not? So
That's a really good question. And it really depends, right? This is personal use versus maybe a business does want to know that, right? And I think there are ways, and we'll touch on this, of advanced ways of saying, oh, it's a returning user, or they've used this skill 5 times. Well, they don't need to hear the welcome message anymore, right? Because that could get really annoying, right? If you hear the same thing for a daily task manager, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something that if I was building this like all the way out, I would definitely want to make a returning user. So this would be kind of like a first time user. But I think it's something that if this was like a business use case and the person could do more than one thing, say they could access their account, they could contact customer service, you want to have them have this kind of menu at the start.
Yep, absolutely. So now obviously, just for consistency's sake, everything in this welcome block, yeah, great. Let's actually connect that. Good call there. So the line, obviously, we're going to start. We need to show the system where we're starting, right? So after the invocation name, we'll head to this welcome block. These 3 blocks of copy will play sequentially because they're all in the same welcome flow here, this welcome step. So now we have, okay, so the last question we have, are you ready to start your first mindful day, right? So the system is prompting a question to the user. So now let's actually create a choice block and drag that over.
Drag this in the same one?
Let's just for visual, let's drag it outside of it actually.
Okay.
And just connect it just so people can really see the flow here. And we'll say
like start.
Yep. So we're asking a question. Do you want to start? Yes or no?
Oops. Oh, you guys even have spell check in here.
Yeah, typing live is never fun, right?
Yeah. Okay. So then I would say yes.
Yes, correct. Yep. And for the sake of this, let's say anything else. Let's just leave it at that for the sake of this skill, because I think you can go deeper and say no or else, right? But like, let's assume the person wants to start, right? So we'll connect it down to that total block. Great.
Yeah.
So now let's assume, right? So now we know the user has prompted. Okay, yes, we'd like to start this. Let's ask their name, right? We want to make this personalized. We want to make this personal. So let's start a new speak block, because now the system has to say something again. And let's actually
build it so people know too. I'm going to build down and then I'm going to connect up, and I'm kind of just going to go like wide as I am doing it.
Perfect. Yeah. And let's connect all the way from yes, assuming, right? Yes. Let's go to the next step. Perfect. Yep. If it wants to do it.
There.
And let's,
I think it's too close here.
It doesn't like it.
Uh-oh.
Interesting. Let's try one more time. There we go. Oh.
That's weird.
Well,
we can come back to that one.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not doing it right now. Okay. So let's call this the name block, right?
Yeah.
And what do we want the assistant to say here to capture that?
So I'll say, like, before we get started, what is your first name?
Cool, great. So now this, obviously the Alexa's saying this. Now we need to capture, voice. We need to capture audible audio from the user. So let's go down the left-hand side. There's the logic built in that says capture right there.
Okay. So
right?
This is a person saying something.
Correct. Yep. And the system collecting that input. Username. Perfect.
Okay.
And then let's so yeah, we want to a lot of these inputs are already built in, but let's look for something like first name. Perfect. Yes. That first name there would be great, because we just need their first name. And then let's select whatever we get. Let's select or create a user ID, right? So now the system knows, okay, what this person who's using it, this is how we should, identify them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, we'll connect those. And then in that user's name block, let's put another speak block underneath it, actually.
I'm up here.
All the way up top. Yep. Perfect. And now let's have to make it really personal, right? Because it is a mindful day habit. Let's have the assistant address the user, right? So it's like, nice. Yeah, nice to meet you. And we're going to plug in that variable, which we just collected, which is going to be user ID. Perfect. Nice to meet you. And then it's going to put the name that the assistant just grabbed. Great.
Yes, perfect. And this is something too that I would signify. So we're over here now. I would signify in my script that I was wanting to collect their first name. And then I would say use it throughout the entire experience.
Emily mentioned that there was a little bit of a bug right now. So let me just go out of here. Perfect. Okay, great. Now let's try to connect that one more time. I think that was why we were having a little bit of issue with that. Let's try one more.
There we go.
Perfect. Great. So now actually, this is a great chance for the designer, the conversation designer, to test, right? Because we got so far. Let's do a test in that blue button top right there. And you can start test, and we should be able to hear it.
Welcome to my Mindful Day, a daily personal growth check-in. Each day you will answer 3 simple questions that can help you realize what matters most and how to be happy and successful. Are you ready to start your first mindful day?
Heck yes.
Yes.
Before we get started, what is your first name? Nice to meet you, Hilary. Let's begin.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Pat on the back. We got there all the way. And I do want to note in the test function, obviously for this, you're actually inputting type, right? For the testing. You could do voice. You could do those chips that are prompted. The tool is meant to be as accessible for testing as possible. Clearly, as you continue to test and prototype, you can use the voice function of your computer or whatever you're using to make sure that the system is picking up the words very accurately as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now that we kind of learned that function, maybe we kind of apply that, ask for a variable, plug that variable back in for like the first question that you would ask. I know we could really build this out right in mood and time of day and how many days have you felt that way and positive, negative sentiment. But for the sake of this, and I think this really is those building blocks, maybe you want to attack like the first mood of how this person is feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. The fun part about this is you can go as in depth as you want. We want to give you a good overview of what it actually takes to build something so that you can kind of fill in the blanks on your own. And this is something that I would continue to build on my own. And as you're testing it, you're actually seeing like where the holes are. You're saying, hey, I should know that I shouldn't ask all these questions the second time. I should make this shorter. I should add this. It's kind of something that you can just continue to build on, which makes it great. So yeah, I think we can just get into, we're already down to here. So like I said, I would probably put some sort of bridge in here. But since this is a voice experience, I think it's better to just be short and sweet. So I'm going to just ask the person what their mood is today. And then I'm actually also going to add their name to this. So I'll just show you how to do that. So how are you feeling today? So Perfect. This is where we are capturing like what their mood is. That's the first question of this.
Yeah, and this, like you said, adding that user ID, you can just replicate. Now that we've grabbed that variable, now we're just plugging and playing that variable throughout the entire project, which is nice. So let's connect these two blocks because after we get their name, we'll jump into the mood. Perfect. And similar to the first one, although I did mention, we could go on the template we'll share at the end really goes deeper into like positive, negative. For this, let's just grab the mood that they're feeling as just kind of a capture again, right? Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
So I can put this here and then I'll just call this mood.
Yep.
Capture.
Perfect. And we'll click into that. Similar to name to set it. So this will be, unlike maybe user ID that was already plugged and played, we'll need to create a unique variable here that we're listening for. So maybe we call it mood or mood type.
So would I just like write that?
Let me see.
Do I create that here?
Oh, yes, thank you. That is what I meant. Yes.
So I would just, write mood, create. Perfect. So then now it's storing this as that, or do I need to select it up here?
Click into the input type there.
Custom.
I want to select custom.
Yep, thank you.
There we go.
Because clearly that's not a built-out Alexa one in there too. Yes. Okay, great.
Yeah. And so people can see really the possibilities here that this could be anything. But this is if you want to capture intents which is something that you're definitely going to want to do in voice because there are no buttons. So you need to know the intent of whatever the person is saying.
Yep, absolutely. So maybe on this one, now that we got their mood, although we're not going as far as understanding that mood at this point, let's create another speak block and add it to that. And let's just acknowledge the mood, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how I had done this here of like, perhaps you would want to do some sort of way that you are having multiple answers. You might want to have a specific reply for positive or negative. I'm going to just copy this over to say like, actually, since I don't know what their mood is, I'm just going to say thank you because that's a lot easier. And then I'm going to use their first name again because that makes them feel special.
It definitely does, right? It makes it much more personal.
Yeah.
Perfect. So maybe we do another test here to kind of see. And one thing I do want to point out, as this test gets longer, we can actually, once you actually click escape here quickly, we can start at any point throughout the test.
Oh, yeah, here.
So the hover play button there will actually allow you to not have to listen through the entire project as you start to build.
There we go.
That should work.
That's great.
The first question is simple. How are you feeling today? Test_user.
Because we hadn't gone through and actually.
Oh yeah, we haven't started that. Oh, so I'm feeling awesome.
Thanks for checking in test_user.
Very personal, test_user.
Yeah, exactly. But it is showing you where it would happen. So that is awesome as well.
What's
and
good
I know
to note about this one is, so in this case, the reason why that happened, just that you know, is it's capturing everything locally. So it's kind of like, we don't know the answer to a question unless we ask it. And so if you were to start from the beginning, it asks the name and now we know what that is. If you started it midway through, anything that was asked before that, you have to assume wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Let's continue, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So next I'm going to do, I think, just kind of like more straightforward. So basically how this is going about is that it's kind of just 3 questions. And so it's alternating between saying things and capturing things.
Yep.
So this is part 2 is the goal section. So next I'm going to say which is probably too much. We'll see when we test it after this, if this is too much text. Uh-oh.
Let's refresh or go back. Yeah,
Here we go. Here I am.
too much text, right? Too much.
I know, it's warning me. That's, yeah, this I can already tell you. And this is something that why it's important to not only use a spreadsheet and to use a prototyping tool is because when I see it here, I'm like, yeah, this looks kind of long, but you know, if I just drag this row over, it looks shorter. But when you see it here, you're like, this is probably too much text. So that's something to keep in mind. There are a few best practices as far as like seconds long for length. But for text, I usually go about like 140 characters. So like a tweet length. Okay, so when I'm asking them a question, do I still use just the speak?
So yeah, for the anything the assistant will say, you'll start that. Then it's the choice or the prompt or the intent of how you'd want that input to be put in.
So, and actually I probably should drag this out so that there's a little bit longer. Oh, and that's actually probably a good time to talk about this too, is there a way I can make longer amount of time in between the messages being sent?
So you can add pauses before, in between copy. So let's click into one of these copy blocks.
Yeah.
And then let's say you wanted to, let's say, let's click into that top one where you said next right there. Yep. Yeah. Let's say you, after the first sentence, you wanted there to be a break. So let's put your cursor where you'd want that break to be, up a little bit.
Oh, here.
Yep. And then you can, add right where you were about to click. Yep.
Here. Okay.
Right there. Yep. And then you can do a short break, a sentence break, or a paragraph break there.
So I would probably do like a sentence break.
Yep. Right? And obviously, so right. Yes. Perfect. That's perfect. Yep. And I think the thing there is to your point, you want it to be a little bit more natural and not feel like rapid fire the whole time. Mm-hmm. So this allows the assistant really to understand and have more of a conversational appearance as you go through.
Yeah, and I see Audra asked in the chat the best practices for seconds. I believe that it's about like 5 to 7 seconds, but I definitely have seen articles out there about that. If you just search like speech or sentence length in seconds, you could find something that's like around 140 characters is, like 10 words. How many seconds is in 10 words, and that's kind of how you can balance it.
Yep. Yeah, I know Emily responded to well, it is then that 5 to 10 seconds is really great. Like you said that, about 7 is perfect. And just keeping it as like you'd want to have a conversation, right? You want to make it as human as possible. So that's a great tip.
Exactly. It's meant to be conversational. So make sure that we never are forgetting that. And that goes both for the length and the message length.
Yep.
So now is when I am getting their goal. So that is also a prompt. Or that's capture.
Yeah. So if you want them to say like a prompt would be a specific set of intents that you'd be listening for.
Okay.
If you want to capture and have anything and set that goal to whatever they do, then we put in that capture.
Okay.
For something open-ended like goal still, unless you were building this for something specific of like a running assistant and you said, what's your goal, 1, 2, or 4 miles, then you could go very specific with intents. But for this, let's keep it more general.
Sure. Okay. So I'm not going to be, since I'm not repeating this later, I'm not going to be capturing it as a variable, right?
Well, I think you probably want to still just to set that. It doesn't hurt to have that, created just in case if you wanted to go back to it later.
Sure. Perfect. Okay. So now we are here. So that would be, part 2, and then we can just continue on. Like I said, this is kind of an example of where if I felt that the speech recognition was very strong, I could repeat that back and say like confirming that I heard that. But that's not necessary 100%. So you don't really have to do that. And then, like I said, so you guys can see all of this. I'm going to just build this more up here. So, and then again, I have my little variable of their first name. So the last question is going to be if it were up to me, which like isn't really a question. It's more of, I guess, just like a thought. And all of this is about kind of, positive mindset. And so that's like take or leave if you are interested in that. But this is something that is just a fun little exercise that I would want to do. So this is if it were up to me, block, and then I need to make sure, especially since I put this all the way up here.
The drag, full drag.
See if I can get it up here.
You can zoom out in the bottom left if you need to as well.
There we go.
Nice.
There we go. All right, so now we have our pretty thing. And this I think is kind of also just a fun way to look at a conversation. I like looking at it, and you could build it wide, you could build it long, you could build however you want, the people who are listening. So if your day went perfectly and you could have or do anything, what would it be? If it were up to you? If it were up to me, I would build my first voice app and it would be
every day.
That's what my check-in would say today.
Great. You're on, you're rolling. Yep.
And see, also for the people listening, like I have used this tool before, but not as much as I'm using it right now. So this really is like how easy it is. And yeah, I just want to point that out.
Yeah, the drag and drop, I think as long as you keep it very step by step and you follow your script, it is easy to use Voiceflow to really map out your vision for it.
Exactly. I'm just going to say like,
you can have some fun with some
up to me.
Cool.
That's what I'll create that as.
Hey, and as a designer, it's your design, right? So you know what it means, right?
Exactly. I'm the only one who needs to know what it means. And then, that will get mapped back over as well. So that's capturing that. And again, this is kind of where you could repeat it back to the person, but you don't have to repeat it back to them. Nope. So I think that it might be fun to just say like, that's a great mindful day for this date. And that's something that I'm sure that you guys probably have in here, right?
Yeah. You're saying for this date?
Yeah, so how would I do that? If I wanted to just say like, great job creating your day on this date today, April 28th.
Yeah, so that'll just be a date variable that Alexa will be able to use. So let's create a speak block, and we're kind of treating this as like the wrap up a little bit, right? Of this skill.
Yeah, so this is like, congrats.
Yeah,
You
great.
completed the exercise.
You made it through, right?
Yeah. So I can just say like, congratulations. This is probably also why I like to copy and paste, is so I don't have to type it and spell check it while I have an audience of people.
Hey, you've had only a few backspaces today. I'm impressed.
Yeah. For today, and then I would just type this little
Yep. And then,
so that is what date?
yes, it should.
Date.
Hey, Emily, is it best practice to do the variable here or create the date from scratch?
Typically what I do here is it really depends on kind of what you'd like. So for instance, we can play around with this so you can see what I mean. So if you put timestamp in here, it's gonna give you the time, but it's not gonna be probably how you'd want to hear it. So here's an example if you want to play back what that means.
Yeah, so can I just play it here?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, for it.
Congratulations, you've completed a mindful day for today 0.
So as you can see there, that is the variable that has a timestamp. It's day 0 because this is the first day. Probably not what you'd ideally want. The way that we would normally go and handle this is there's a few different ways. So one is normally you don't typically want to ask in the situation, oh, what day is it? And then you repeat it back to the user. So what we normally recommend is when you are able to publish to, let's say, Alexa, Google, or to your own database, you can pull that directly. Okay. And in the tutorial that we're going to send out to you guys following this, so you can play around with yourself, we'll dive a little bit deeper into it. But otherwise, we'd have to potentially share Hilary logging into her developer portal, which probably is best.
Yeah, which is not necessarily a thing I want to do for the first time, even though I
That's too many things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you can also pull, similar to like a Facebook Messenger, where you can pull things that already exist that never will change, being like a zip code, their phone number if they have it stored, their name from their Facebook profile, the day, things that are just knowns versus things that are variables.
Yep. Yeah, just like the name, like we mentioned, right? You can ask for the name, or you can just pull that from their account because they use it all the time.
Yeah, and so that's something to keep in mind, especially as you create, your first skill. It could be something that someone, you could already present them with that name, and that makes it like a little bit more special. I think someone's always kind of excited when you know something about them. Some people might find it a little creepy, but I think in general, people do like that you don't have to ask them for something. It's one less question,
Yeah, absolutely. So before we test this, do you want to change that last message, and we could keep the timestamp, or if you want just you can just keep it as something happy and true.
I'm gonna say just your first, but yeah, you see that I would, if I was doing something that's meant to be a habit, I would want to include that it was this day, especially if we are adding in any place that they're storing this information, say this is for an app, or this is for, some other sort of personal use. This could be something that a person could go back and see all of their logs, which is why we would want to signify what date it was that they completed this on.
Yep. That's a great point. Great. So I think well, first off, give yourself a little bit of a round of applause. We haven't tested it yet, so I guess we can't fully celebrate, right? But I do want to share one thing in the share tab. If you want to go up top and click on that. So the prototyping feature is obviously something in Voiceflow that a lot of designers use to create the design, prototype, and share with like development or end users. You talked about building for clients. One thing that is relatively new is the appearance and branding tab. So if you want to click that down there, you can actually change.
This is something that I would love.
I'm sure do you have a color picked out that you'd want to use?
I do. Yeah. I'm sure that you guys created this feature just because we were doing this workshop and
Yes.
you knew that I would want to use it. So
We
thank
did.
you for doing this just for me.
We did.
I'm waiting for this memorized pink hex code.
I actually have a screenshot of it on my desktop. I'm not going to say that I know, but I do know that I love that you already knew it would be pink.
There you go. And then, so great. So that pink will really, brand your prototype that you share, but you can also add in a brand image and or a message icon. Those can be the same or they can be different. Well, you can kind of see the difference. So do you have a photo or a logo you'd want to use?
Yeah. So for the sake of testing this, should I add an image for each different image so people can see the one?
Yeah, if you have a second image, then we can kind of show where both live. The
I
brand
have
image,
logos that I'll just use.
hey, that's perfect. The brand image will be kind of that true like brand stamp, and the message icon will think of it kind of like the assistant's face, right? Or the assistant's personality. So
Yeah, so for this, for people who may do this, I would put like my picture in this message icon, but I don't have one handy. So just imagine that my letters are me.
yes, perfect. If you click open link in new tab, will that show? I don't know if it should, right?
Yeah, I'm sharing my browser, so this would.
Okay, great. So that'll just show it.
Ooh.
Yeah, right. The pink is wonderful there. It has the name of the skill that you're working with. Obviously, this is not Amazon Alexa specific, right? And that's something to be aware of, right? This is just the prototype that you can use across any general assistant, anything you're building for, but a great way to test it. So we can either test it here or we can test it in the tool. Which would you prefer?
I think why don't we test it here, right?
Okay, yeah, let's try it.
Okay, I'm nervous.
I don't
The
I
big
think we
moment.
Hello and welcome to my Mindful Day, a daily personal growth check-in. Each day you will answer 3 simple questions that can help you realize what matters most and how to be happy and successful. Are you ready to start your first mindful day?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Can I also type yes?
Yes, I think you can.
Before we get started,
Perfect.
what is your first name?
I think you can type it if what I type matches exactly what we have there, just for people if you're wondering that.
Nice to meet you, Hilary. Let's begin. The first question is simple. How are you feeling today, Hilary?
Great.
Thanks for checking in, Hilary. Next, we will move on to your goal for the day. Your mindful day check-in includes one goal. Setting attainable priorities can help us feel more accomplished and improve overall mindset. Your daily goals can be big, like putting together a presentation, or small, like calling a friend to catch up. What is your goal for today?
So that's the point where I had mentioned during the design that it looked too long. And then here's where you could actually hear that it was a little too long. What I would suggest, like as a conversation designer, is to combine these 2 messages into one message that just is a little bit shorter. So instead of having that I have 4 messages back to back, I would not recommend that. And so I would suggest that you just keep that in mind. But this is, again, where it really comes into importance of hearing this is very different than me seeing it. And even if you are designing for chat, you can actually just read this out loud and say, like, that's too long. So my goal today is to build my first voice app with Voiceflow.
Okay, Hilary. Lastly, it's time to think about the bigger picture.
Ooh.
Let's call this
Wow.
question up to me.
Big
If your day
pie.
went perfectly and you could have or do anything, what would it be? Start with if it were up to me.
And this is another thing I saw in the chat that someone asked, do you have to tell them what to start with? And I think the answer for that is no. The reason I did it here is if I were listening for an intent, and if I wanted to store that, I would want to make sure I'm getting that phrase in the way that I want to receive it. And so I don't want to have it be that the person is just saying it. I want to listen for them saying if it were up to me, and then knowing that when they say if it were up to me, anything that follows that means that it's this intent. So that's why I did that in this case. But if you notice, I didn't do it for the other ones. So this is kind of just different ways to show that.
Yep.
So if it were up to me, I would make a super fun voice app that everyone loves. 10 out of 10.
Your day's going really well then.
Completed your first mindful day.
Great.
Hey, look at that. So
That's
no,
awesome. I love that you can hear it too. Like that, I think that just makes it like way more special.
Yep, absolutely. No, that worked very smoothly. There was really no error. I'm actually impressed. No bugs, no errors. Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that you pointed out there that I did want to mention as well, like with if it were up to me, that's a little bit more of an open-ended prompt too, right? And the response might be longer, like it was here. So that's another good point where it's so much to grab. Why not have like a sub intent to think about there? But
yeah, exactly. And that's another thing too, where for example, in this long block of text, if you think the person forgot what you're asking them, then you can just ask it again. That's also kind of another way that you can remind them that this is the answer that I'm looking for.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, what a good project. Good job. You made it through.
Thank
You created your
you.
first voice app. That's awesome. Yeah, I think the main things that I want to leave people with, at least on the canvas, before we hop back over to a few more slides to wrap it up, would just be that like there is so much more advanced functionality that you can take advantage of here. Like we mentioned, if you're connecting to Airtable, Google Sheets, any of those API calls, you can obviously track this information and revisit it. And then every time you add a layer, then Voiceflow allows you to track more and save that information to re-access later. So I think this is a great foundational building block for this mood tracker though.
Yeah, and I just to say too, like what I would do from here, if you're building something for say like your portfolio, you're experimenting with your very first voice app, is you could do something like connect it to an Airtable or Google Sheets to actually log all of these things for the person. You could set up Zapier that they could, get a special email if they have logged for a certain amount of days. There's really a lot that you can do to actually kind of make this more engaging and make it more like multimodal for the person. Like I mentioned, if it's like you're building this as an add-on to a mobile app, there could be something where you can make it trigger different things in the app. There's a lot of different ways that you can kind of make this into a bigger experience than just what you're seeing here. And even what I would want to do is go back through and add returning users, add, once you have completed 10 sessions, you would get a special welcome message. There's a lot that you can add into this, and you can really, really get creative in the design, which is another reason why I would say that you want to pick for your first project something that you're passionate about. Because if you are not passionate about the subject, you're probably not going to put in all of the work to build in all of these little integrations that can make it really, really exciting and engaging.
Yeah, and you mentioned branding, and before we wrap up, you can actually change the color of the lines. So I want you, maybe we try that real quickly. You can just click on right there.
Let me like get my little color so I can show you how I would do this exactly to my specifications.
Have that pink pop on the canvas.
Exactly. Like that looks so great. And another way that you can use this too is if you want to make your different flows be a different color, that's something that I think it's like, pretty easy to get lost when you have a lot of flows, so that you could actually change these and say, oh, now that I'm building, I want to make it green. And so I'm going to make everything that's associated with this flow green. And it's just another way to organize your thoughts, I think, and be able to isolate specific things, especially if you want to start playing it at a certain point. You could say, I'm going to make the entire create flow purple. And then when I'm ready to test that part, I just go to the first purple line and play that out.
And even if you have, let's say you're collaborating, if you want to click on the very bottom left in the markup button down there, it's yes, perfect. You can click on that. You can actually add text or images as well. So let's just add text to show it.
How do I do that?
Once more, it defaulted. Yep. And
so then I just like type.
Yep, exactly. So if you want to say like start here, or like this is the mood flow or mood step, right? You can add those things in there. And then let's say, like we were collaborating, I could go in and know exactly what you were hoping to do there.
Yeah, exactly. And you can make this all however you want. Then you can drag it. You could, I believe you can put emojis in here too, right?
And then the images, we do have some sticker libraries as well that we'll continue to share that really are fun for markup, whether that's like sticky note or different images for different personas, etc. It really allows some in-depth markup as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then this is also where you can leave comments for collaboration as well.
Yep.
Right. Or you can leave comments anywhere.
Yeah, just with the markup tool, you could just use those comments. And yeah, sorry, and this, you could tag the collaborators that you're working with in this project as well. And then I'd get a notification, be able to go in just like any other app that you'd be using.
Yeah, that's super awesome.
Yeah. Great. Well,
We
this
did
is you did it. If you don't mind, I'll take over the screen share one more time to just wrap up with one more thing I wanted to call out. I know you mentioned a few other templates that we were looking at. I know we have a couple more minutes here, so if anyone is able to hang out, we'll also show this on YouTube after. But I did want to show this. We're building out a whole series of templates that you can just copy and download the project into your own workspace. But this is one that I recently did along with the growth team called a resume assistant. I actually built it as part of a job process recently, which was great. And what you're able to do is input your own resume responses and allow a hiring manager to ask those questions, right, with those intent steps. So like, about you, or why do you want to work here? Questions like that, and answer those simple questions. It's another great foundational building block project for someone who's new to voice and wants to kind of layer in both of those skills.
Yeah, I would 1,000,000% say that if you are looking for a job in conversation design, in voice or in chat, you should definitely use this template, and you should make a resume bot, even if you just put it as a link in your portfolio or in your resume. If someone sent me this, they would get the job like without even talking to them, because the thought process that you're actually showing me that you know how to design is like really amazing. So props to you, Sam, for coming up with this idea.
Yeah, and I like you said, it shows your resume, but also shows your skills. It's portfolio all in one.
Yeah. This is how Sam got his job at Voiceflow. So this is definitely proving that this works. And like I said, I think this is such a great idea for people to both create their first example. Maybe it's not your first example, but just another way that you can create something that's really engaging. You can add in you saying something. That's all really, really cool. Audra also says she would love if people would apply in this way.
Yeah, and I know Emily will be sharing. We'll also share this in the email afterwards. A link to download this and kind of start from scratch, which is great. Hopefully, people use it and have some luck with it too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, with the templates, like we did this workshop today, starting from scratch, but that's not how you have to do it. You could start from whatever template you want and kind of copy some of the ideas. You can change things, move things around. I had jumped into the mood tracker one, and that's how I got the idea to track positive or negative mood. And so that's something that you can very easily not have to duplicate all of that work. Or you could start from scratch too, because as you see, it's super easy.
Yep. Yeah, speaking of the mood tracker, we'll also have a link to that. But that, like we mentioned, we kind of worked from this and did a initial, but this allows you to connect, shows you how to connect with an Airtable or that kind of database to track them. You'd also can track positive and negative. So then it really is an immersive mood tracker experience that is a nice step two after going off of what we built today.
Yeah, exactly. And it could be, maybe you don't want it to be a mood tracker, you want it to be a water tracker. There's ways that you can go in and kind of look at the different integrations that you're doing and repurpose those. And even just to learn how to do it. I think it's good to browse the templates just to see how you do things, especially if you're using it for one of your first times.
Yep, absolutely. As we wrap up here, just a reminder that obviously you can access Voiceflow on desktop or browser. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and send your biggest takeaway from today at Voiceflow HQ, and then this entire presentation and in all of its glory, building your first voice app will be up on our YouTube later today or tomorrow.
Yeah, so awesome.
A reminder to join our community, bit.ly/Voiceflow community, to be in contact with other conversation designers as well. Thank you, Hilary. It was a blast today to build this with you. Congratulations on making it through the pressure cooker of building. And no, it was fantastic and really seamless. So good work and kind of going from chat to voice.
Yeah, thank you. I hope that everyone enjoyed it. I had so much fun. I can't wait to right after this go in and keep kind of messing around with stuff. But yeah, I hope you guys got a lot of great ideas. And thank you both so much for allowing me to do this and just pick your brains in front of everyone.
No,
Absolutely.
thank you so much. And thanks everybody for asking your questions. We'll follow up with all of the many links that both Hilary and Sam have shared. If you guys have any questions, any comments, what would you like us to build next? Let us know on social. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.